What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host. And man, we believe here that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. That success isn't a linear one-time decision, but that success is a decision that you get the chance to make each and every day by the kind of life that you live, the relationships that you have, and how you put God at the forefront and the center of your life. Man, if you haven't done so already, please give this podcast a rating and review. Whether you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, or on YouTube, you're checking out the live video on YouTube. Man, your reviews, your commentary on how this podcast is encouraging you or blessing you is really the only way that this thing grows. And just shout out to everybody that is sharing this podcast. Man, it feels like, every time I go on social media that there's some kind of repost or retweet. Who retweets anymore? But there's some kind of repost or somebody just sharing the messaging that's coming out of the pot. So man, just thank you all for being able to push this message forward. And yeah, let's dive into the topic, man. So today I want to talk about living a life in purpose versus living a life in pockets of purpose. Living a life in purpose versus living a life that has pockets of purpose. I'm kind of encouraged to talk about this subject because if any of you checked out the last podcast episode, Jasmine joined me, my wife joined me on the last podcast, and we really talked about our experience on moving to Charlotte, but just moving in general, like how important relocating our lives have been to us connecting and tapping into purpose. And I said a statement on the podcast that I really felt that I could expound more on. And I said something around the topic of, sometimes many people get caught in pretty much build a life where they tap into pockets of purpose instead of living a life of actual purpose. And so I want to dive into that topic today in this episode and really what the difference is. And I would say also how you can identify if you're truly living a life purpose-filled or if you've settled for having and enjoying just pockets of purpose. All right. So let's dive into this, man. I just as a quick story, growing up, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. And if any of you know Akron or really any, I would say, kind of smaller town feel, like Akron wasn't that small. It's not that small of a city, but it's not small compared to, your one high school cities and one stoplight cities. But compared to, a major metropolitan city, it's much smaller than that. And one of the identifiers of Akron is, and if you're not from Akron, you could get really confused, in that the city of Akron is structured in a way that you could have one street that is really good. Like it's a really nice street with really good roads and it's got really nice houses on it. And man, you could drive 3 minutes up the road and be somewhere that would look completely different. Like it'll look like you're on a completely different side of town. And you almost have these pockets of nice houses, these pockets of wealth or these pockets of opulence, where there's houses that, they might have the white picket fence, right? They may be, a really nice suburban home, but man, just around the corner, like literally 3 minutes away, like you could be in the middle of the hood where you see some crazy stuff and you wouldn't want to drive, at nighttime or late at night around these neighborhoods. And so there is some identity things around the city of Akron that creates this. And it encouraged me because I think life for many people is so much like that if we're not careful, we could find ourselves just like the city that I grew up in, where you just have these pockets of purpose. Like you have a stretch in your life that, man, on weekends, you are so tapped into purpose, or when you're at church, you're so tapped into purpose. Or maybe when you're at work, you're so connected and so tapped into purpose. But the minute that you clock out, the minute that you go home from church, the minute that you drive around a corner in your life, you find yourself no longer in purpose. You almost have this mode in which you're switching between, hey, I'm doing something that I'm on purpose to do and something that God has called me to do, versus doing things that you just doing just to do, and you're just going through the motions. And if I'm honest, when it comes to making the pivots in life, the pivots that you should always be making would be the pivots to eliminate the pockets of purpose. It would be, how can I make the shifts and the pivots today that would reduce the pockets of purpose that I continually live in? So, for example, you might have 10 pockets of purpose, and the goal would be that you just live a huge life that's full of purpose and that's wrapped in purpose. It's draped in purpose. It's decorated in purpose. That may be the goal, right? Like, that's what we're trying to build. But you may not have that kind of life right now. You may have very little things right now that seem to be connected with purpose. You might, it might just be, that you get to volunteer one day on a Saturday, and that really feels like purpose. Or it might be that, man, you started a business and the business is still growing, but every time you're in that business, it finally feels like purpose. Maybe you starting a podcast, and every time you crack the mic open, when you crack the mic open, it finally feels like you are in purpose. And I want to really talk through how to really like eliminate these pockets and just start living a complete full life of purpose. Because I believe that the pockets of purpose also is a trick from the enemy. That the devil would desire nothing more for you to just live a life where you're on in one moment and you're off in the next. That you almost have a divided sense of purpose. You almost have a hot on and off switch, or a hot and cold switch when it comes to you living a life truly based on what God has called you to. If I'm honest, really what God has called us to, it is something that will be significant, and that it's something that will really engulf your life. And I've known what it's been to live a life that would be in pockets of purpose. And again, that would be something where maybe I'm going to work and the work doesn't feel like purpose, but I'm going home and it's like, man, I finally feel like this is purpose. Or again, it could be going to church on a Sunday, and that's really the only moment that feels like purpose. But you go back home, or you go, to do something else, and it just doesn't feel like purpose. It doesn't feel like it's the thing that God has uniquely called you to. All right. So, so the way to get there, the path to getting to reducing this challenge, right, of pockets of purpose or moments in your life that you just don't feel you're called to, but you're just doing them anyway. The thing that you got to do is you've got to be okay with making the pivots. All right. That's what this podcast is all about, is making the pivots, making the adjustments. If we're honest with ourselves, we know that the success that we have truly is on the opposite side of the pivots we've yet to make. And so if you want to live a life that's not just pockets of purpose, but a life that is full of purpose, the best thing that we can do is make the pivots to get out of the things that don't feel like purpose, to get out of the things that are not charging our faith, that are not challenging us to get uncomfortable, that are not feeling uniquely and qualified in you feeling called to do. When I talk about purpose, right? Because some people may not know what purpose is. And I just really identify purpose as doing the thing in life where you have no rivals. God placed us all here on earth to solve a problem. And the problem that he placed us on earth to solve was a pretty big problem. Like, the problem was that there was a humankind, that there was man who, because of sin, was going to be for eternity separated from relationship with him and separated from heaven. Right. And so he sent us to come into the world. He sent his son first to die for our sins. But then as he died for our sins, we as people, right, like we as, man, woman, boy, or girl, get the opportunity to tell people about the good work of God, right? The good work, the power of Jesus, his unmerited favor, his mercy, his grace, all that kind of stuff, how he's changed us, how he's blessed us. We get the chance to tell people the good news, right? So our purpose is somehow, some way connected to telling people the good news about Jesus. Now, I know what you're thinking. You may not be a minister. You may not be a pastor. You may not be on staff at a church. You may not, that may not be what you consider your gift. And that's okay. What purpose should feel like is that, man, you're really able to help people live a life that is more God-centered based on how you live your life, not based on what you tell people. And so when we talk about living a life that's God-centered, that means that you do the thing that God has placed you on earth to do, that there is nothing else that should take precedent of what you are here to do, but what you were placed on earth to do. And you were placed on earth not to fit in, but to stand out. And the gift that God placed on the inside of you, that God has deposited each and every one of us with a unique gift. And if we can truly work and operate in that unique gift, we will be in a position where we have no rivals. That is the place of purpose. You will find yourself doing things that just fill you up like nothing else does. You will find that you would have a level of success doing a thing that no one else can have. You would often do it effortlessly and without thinking. What comes easy to you and hard to other people, right? Like that is in essence how we really nail down purpose. Purpose is really hard to do without community, because if you're not connected to community when you're trying to identify purpose, then that really just means that like it's hard for you to know what you do well and what other people struggle at if you are trying to find purpose in isolation. Purpose is truly found in community. Purpose is, man, dude, you're like really good with your hands. Or man, like you're really good communicator. Or man, like purpose, often people identify and show you what the gifting is that's inside of you that can help you really identify purpose, right? So with that being said, how to eliminate these pockets of purpose, how to create a better life that's more in line and more in flow and less segmented and broken up. So again, the first thing that I believe you got to do is we have to be focused on making the pivots in life. There are things right now that's in your life that you know that doesn't serve you any longer. There are people in your life that you just know don't serve you any longer. You got to be okay with making the pivots. You got to be okay with making the adjustments. I know what you're thinking. Justin, okay, give me more. I need more substance. What do you mean make the pivots, make the adjustments? If you want to live an opposite life, you have to make opposite choices. You have to have opposite thoughts. You have to have opposite views. You have to have opposite relationships. If you want to live an opposite life, you have to do opposite things of what you're currently doing. And so I can't necessarily speak and say, hey, this is the exact things that you should be doing each and every day to truly live a life of purpose and get out of the pockets of purpose. But here is the trick, right? Like the little thing that the writing on the wall says that, man, you've got to start doing things opposite. Like you've got to look at everything you're doing in your life and say, man, how could I do something opposite? When I personally started to find that there were things in my life that I didn't desire, that I didn't want, I said, man, what if I just start doing the opposite of those things? If I desire to have a better body and the meals that I'm eating right now is not getting me that body, what if I eat opposite meals of those? Instead of eating the sugary stuff, what if I ate all the super healthy stuff, right? Like it's simple, like it's not rocket science. If I'm struggling with my work ethic, maybe I don't stay up late, but maybe I get up early instead. If I don't have the right relationships, instead of going to the club, maybe I go to church, like the opposite places, right? You almost look at everything as an opposite. And if there's an area in your life that you don't feel like is purpose there, start doing the opposite thing. And what'll begin to happen, and at least what happened for me was it showed me everything that I was afraid of. When I began to do everything that was opposite, it really showed me the things that I was truly afraid of. And so what that really meant for me was that I had to lean into all of the things that I then was afraid of. So this, if you sure you want to do this, like you could cut the episode off now. We don't have to go much further, right? Do you sure you want to live a life full of purpose or pockets of purpose? Because truly living a life in pockets of purpose is it's very comfortable. You can be okay with waking up, going to a job that you hate if you want to live a life that has pockets of purpose. If you want to live a life with pockets of purpose, you can enjoy being in a relationship that you know is not serving you any longer. If you are okay with living a life that has pockets of purpose, you will be okay with living paycheck to paycheck. But if you really want to take this journey to living a life full of purpose, you will no longer be in relationships that you know don't serve you any longer. You will find better ways to build more money disciplines and better money habits so that you aren't living paycheck to paycheck. You'll actually put a little bit more hustle and work in to actually make more money and be able to, like, you will, living a life full of purpose doesn't mean that you have to make only easy decisions. What it could mean is that it's time to make a lot of hard decisions that you've been putting on the back burner. Everyone has the ability to live a life full of purpose. I want your job to be purpose. I want your marriage to be purpose. I want your relationships to be purpose. I want your everything, your home life to be purpose, the church that you go to be purpose. Everything that you look at that doesn't feel like purpose, you get the chance to decide if you're going to keep it that way and just live in the pocket, or are you going to truly live the abundant life, which is full of purpose? Man, I feel like I have some authority to speak about this subject because I would say for the first time in my life, I truly feel like I'm living a full life of purpose. It's crazy to say that, but I really didn't know that I was living in pockets of purpose until I began to live a full life of purpose. And literally everywhere I look, it feels like purpose. What I do for a living feels like purpose. My home feels like purpose. My spouse feels like purpose. My kids feel like purpose. This podcast feels like purpose. My business feels like purpose. And it's like one of those pinch you moments. Like, I don't have anything in my life that I don't desire to do. Like, I only do things that really feel like purpose. And it's not saying that there's not hard days, but I have experienced what living a life full of purpose really feels like. And my encouragement is that no matter where you are in your experience, no matter where you are in your journey, that you continue to make the pivots in life. I've lived in 4 different states, right? Like, I've had so many adjustments in life, and in these adjustments that have helped me truly live this life of purpose. And so I just want to encourage you all that as we talk about the pivot mindset, that you know that it's not just a mindset, but it's also a life set, and that it's the mindset decisions impact how you actually live your life. And that's all I got for you in this episode, man, is getting out of the process of living in pockets of purpose and truly live a life full of purpose. All right. And so, man, I appreciate you for checking out this episode. I hope you've listened and heard. We got a new intro. We got a new outro, man. We're changing things up a bit, switching things around, trying to level up the podcast. I love the new intro. And man, as you know here, that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.